Okay, in this video, I want to show you a few refinements for generating the geologic model from boring data for this Corning geologic model that we saw in a previous video. So the boreholes that are here, let's see, we can see them better. I think I have to turn off the base map. So I put in these boreholes. This was done in the previous video, and here's the geologic map. And if I take a look at them in perspective, there they are. And you can see there are horizons defined on those boreholes. And so when I first put this together, I went and used the auto assign horizons, and it gave me some selections that I used to make some solids, and first of all some cross sections and then some solids, and it worked okay, but it wasn't really quite the way that I was expecting. And so the first thing that I did in this revision was I went in and assigned the solids by hand. And this is what I did. These are the solids that I used. And let me turn on the cross sections here. So there's the cross section. And the strategy that I used for assigning these solids or these horizons was this. You can see the bottom is the 0 horizon. So that's just the default. And then the number 1 horizon defines the top of this gray unit that's the bedrock. So the number 1 horizon was selected for as that contact in that borehole. Oops. Right there. And then this one, and since this was the top of the unit here, even though it's the ground surface, I assigned that as a horizon of 1. And then following that approach, the top of the till is right here. So this was horizon 4, and this was also horizon 4. The way that so that was the idea for the horizon 4. Let's see, horizon number 2 was right here. And that's the contact between the sand and this clay layer here. And what's kind of conceptually then, this is the top surface of this sand, and conceptually there's going to be a contact here that is separating this lower sand from an upper sand. And when I set up the, when I set up the cross section, let's look at this cross section here. So I put that in, that line there. So we've got a lower sand that's defined by this horizon and an upper sand that is defined by this horizon, where the horizons are defining the upper contact of the unit. Okay, so that's the way that I set it up. This was then horizon 3 was the defining the top surface of this thin clay layer, and horizon 5 is here, and that's defining the top surface of this sand. Horizon 6 is defining the top surface of this terrace sand. Okay, so that's how I picked the horizons. And here's the cross section. And then I generated some solids from that, and I did a few of them. So let me show you the first set of solids that I got. Take a look at it in plan view first. So there it is in plan view, and here's the bedrock, here's the till, the terrace, and then this is the sand, the main sand aquifer. So, that's possible approach, possible interpretation. But the problem is that when I take a look at the geologic map, turn that back on. So here's the geologic map. So the geologic map says that there's this boundary here. That's the contact with the till at the surface, and then the terrace sand is just this little wedge here. But if I take a look at the terrace sand in this interpretation, in this solids model, it's quite big, extends like that, and there's a little patch over here. So that doesn't seem quite right. And the till, here's the till, it extends out here. That doesn't seem really quite right. And these sand layers, they're the two sand layers. And there they are. There's one of them, and there's the other one. So these solids that are determined from this cross section, they just don't really conform to the geologic map as much as I'd like. So what I did was to use put in a coverage that had horizons in it, and I used the horizons in the coverage to define. Basically, I used the coverage to define the lateral extent of these horizons. So that allowed me to trim the horizon, the extent, and get it more consistent with the geologic map. So the way that I did that was I went in here and put in a new coverage or new conceptual model, and the conceptual model type was horizon. So I selected that, and I'm not actually going to do that. I'm going to go here to this. This is the conceptual model that I put in that way. I can right click and check on the properties and see that it is a horizon type of conceptual model. And so the first thing that I did was to put in a coverage that I called base. And let's take a look at that, at base. So this is the map of the area that I'm going to include. So this would really be the extent of the geologic model that I'm going to create from this cross section. Okay, so then when I had that, I went and did the build horizon coverages. So this builds these coverages automatically. And before I started with that, actually, when I did the base coverage, so this is the coverage, and I went and set this up with, let's see. So I did redistribute vertices. Well, I selected the line and did redistribute vertices, and I made them, I don't know, 20 or 30 meters across. So there are a fair number of vertices. And I also used this to create a tin. So I went and did map to tin. And then this tin up here is the tin that's created from this coverage with the redistributed vertices. And you want to do the redistributed vertices so that the tin has fairly good resolution. Okay, so then I went in and created these horizons, and I created them automatically. And then let's see, the horizon 1, this is going to define bedrock. So I can look up here at the solids and see how it says bedrock 1. Bedrock 1 is defined by horizon 1. Bedrock 2 is defining sand 2, and so on. So I just kind of went here and took a look at what these individual horizons were going to give me. And so the horizon for the bedrock, I turned on bedrock, and actually when I made this first solids model, I had a different base. So you can see that it had this is the shape of the base that I used initially. So let's take a look at this solids model, which is the first one that I did with this new base. Okay, so this fills out that base, and let's just take a look at the bedrock horizon. So the bedrock covers the whole map, and that's what we want. So the horizon is just continuous over the whole map. So that seems to make sense. So for horizon number 2, come on. Horizon number 2 is defining sand number 2 here. And the sand number 2. So that's what I want to have for horizon number 2, that region. And I can delete this region here. And it looks like, well, so what I did was when I made horizon number 2, I went in here and selected the line. And the attribute table, I clicked that it was an outside boundary. Hit OK. And I did the same thing here and here. And then at this point, we could delete this coverage. I did this, I made, you can see here, I made several solids models. And I think maybe I'm seeing the horizon that that doesn't have the deleted region. But the way you would set this up is you'd highlight this region and you just simply delete that, because that's outside of the region that we want to have as the sand. And so I would do the same thing for horizon number 3. And this is the clay. So I put in this region here that's the lateral extent of that clay layer. And, I don't really know what the lateral extent is, so I'm just inferring that this is what it is. Okay, and horizon number 4, we look up here, this is the till. So I'm saying that the till, the lateral extent is here, and that it's not here. And again, these boundaries I put in later. So when I did this first model, these were not included. But the way I would want to set this up now is just I would delete that and delete that. And so now I've got this region here. That is this is the region that I want to have occupied by the till. And you can see I have some over here too. And here. And then horizon 5. Horizon 5 is going to be the upper sand. And here you can see that I've got it occupying the valley. And then horizon number 6. This is this little wedge of terrace sand. So you can see I've got that based on the model. So I did this, and actually the horizons that you're seeing here are kind of my latest version of the horizons, and I did this in several steps and have several solids models. And let's just take a look at this one first. So this is the first solids model that I made, and you can see I have this wedge of terrace sand, so that seems seems okay. But one of the problems that I had here was the extent of the till. So I went and modified that in my next version. And let's see, here's my next version. Well, I guess I didn't modify that there. I can still see it, but I modified between the solids model and that I just showed you in this one. I did some modification, and then this solids model this is what I made um, with the most recent version of the Horizon conceptual model. So let's see. This is what I've got, and you can see that I trimmed out the till, and let me see. So there's the terrace sand right in there. You can see just this little triangular wedge, and then the 5 sand. This is the upper sand, and you can see that it's occupying the upper part of the valley, but it also goes up here on the valley wall. And the reason for that is because I set up horizon number 5 based on the geologic map, and the geologic map isn't really registered quite right to the topography. So I could adjust that because I don't really think that this alluvial sand, goes up the valley like that. And so let's see, I'll turn that off and take a look at what the till looks like. So there's the till, and there's a hole here in the till, and it's not quite clear what that is, but it may be because I need to put in additional boreholes here. The clay layer here, there's the clay layer, so that's pretty good. That seems quite accurate, to quite consistent with what we were expecting when we put in the coverage. And there's the lower sand, and the bedrock. Okay, so it seems like we've got this now pretty good. We might want to try changing the contact with the sand. And so let's just go and run a quick. And so I turned on the tin with the elevations, and I'm working on Horizon 5. And you can see here, this shows the problem pretty nicely. This was the area that we were using to mask out the lateral extent of the sand. And you can see it goes up on the topography. So we just need to edit that. Okay, so let's say we want to use that for the revised Horizon 5. We also have Horizon 2. So what I think I'm going to do is go and, well, let's see. How about if I take this and copy it to coverage 2, or Horizon 2, in the coverage for Horizon 2. So we'll do that. And then within Horizon 2, we should have both of these coverages. And we can just select this and delete that one. Let's delete the line too. Okay, so this is going to be the lateral extent of the sand, both the upper and the lower sand. And so let's go ahead and try generating the solids for this. So I'm going to use the borehole cross sections. I'm not going to use the tins. And this is important. See where it says use horizon conceptual model? I'm going to make sure that that's checked. And the primary tin is tin 2, and this is the tin that I made earlier that's this outline here. The tin elevations I'll use for topography, and the bottom of the boreholes I'm going to use for the bottom. And this is just the defaults. Okay, so there's the new geologic model, and you can see now the lateral extent of the sand is more along the lines of what we're expecting. And let's take a look at how this is appearing in 3D. Well, look, we have a little bit of a wedge there, so we're going to want to do a little more work on that, but this is coming along. The till is coming up here along the sides. And we have this little wedge of the terrace, and we still just have a little bit of a problem here right along the corner. So still a little bit more work to do, but hopefully this gives you some ideas about how you can go and refine your geologic model so it's more consistent with what the distribution of units that's expected based on the geology of the site.